How do you think a majority of your frontline leaders view meetings? A, they love them and look forward to them. B, they see them as a necessary evil. Or C, they hate them and avoid them at all costs. If you're being honest, it's probably B or C, and they didn't arrive at that opinion randomly. Today, we're going to talk about why and what you can do about it. Well, welcome back to the Frontline Leadership Podcast, where we help frontline leaders become professional leaders that transform business bottom lines in the process. I'm your host, Craig Coyle, former Apache helicopter pilot, aerospace leader, and the founder of Operation Lead. And if you're a senior leader watching your frontline supervisors struggle to get real traction with their teams, you are not alone. But more importantly, there's a fix. So let's dive in. Last week, we talked about what a real mission looks like and what it actually takes to nest that mission through every level of your organization so it reaches the floor. If you haven't heard that episode yet, go back and take a listen. It's the foundation for everything we're building today and the foundation that it stands on. Because here's the question episode 20 leaves you with. The mission is nested and flows down to the floor. So now what? How does a frontline supervisor keep the mission alive and actionable for their team? Not once, not at the start of the year, but every single day. And that's what we're answering today. So let's start with where the culture is right now. Meeting fatigue is real. The skepticism is real. The eye rolls when another calendar invite lands in your inbox. Those are all real. And here's the thing, that skepticism is earned. It didn't come from nowhere. Most people's lived experience of meetings is some version of the same thing. You show up, there's no clear agenda, someone dominates the conversation, you leave with no action items, and 2 hours of your day are just gone so one person can get updates or help. Repeat that enough time and you'd easily fall victim to thinking meetings are the enemy. But before we go further, I want to draw a line that most conversations about meetings never bother to draw. Not all meetings are the same. There are project meetings and collaboration sessions, the working sessions where a cross-functional team gathers to solve a problem, align on a deliverable, or move something forward together. When executed right, those meetings are often energizing, they're purposeful and directional. When done wrong, they feel draining, wasteful, and one-sided. And then there are recurring standing meetings, the regular leadership cadence that a frontline supervisor runs with their team on a week-in, week-out basis. The standing team meeting, the shift hub, the Monday morning touch point. The meeting that's on the calendar every week, whether anything changed or not. When executed right, these also feel energizing, purposeful, and directional. But when done wrong, they feel like interrogations and threats. The problem was never the meetings themselves. The problem was what most meetings were actually built to do and who they were built to serve. That's what this episode is all about. Not how to have fewer meetings, not how to make your meetings shorter, but how to fundamentally rethink what a frontline team's recurring cadence is for, if they even have one, and what it can do for your operation when it's built and run the right way. Today, we're focusing strictly on recurring standing meetings, but many of the same mindsets apply to our project huddles and collaborations as well. So let's start with something most leaders have never actually examined. If you're a VP, a director, a COO, or a general manager, you live inside a meeting cadence. In all honesty, it's probably most of your week. You probably have a weekly leadership team meeting, maybe a monthly ops review, a quarterly business review, some version of a standing one-on-one with your direct reports, I hope. That infrastructure exists. It functions, and at some point, someone built it intentionally. Someone decided these meetings needed to happen, define their purpose, and put them on the calendar. That system, as imperfect as it may be, keeps your leadership team aligned, it surfaces issues, and it moves the organization forward. So here's the question I want you to sit with. Where does that cadence stop? Because in most organizations, and I mean most, the intentional meeting architecture exists at the senior level and stops somewhere well above the front line. And everything below that line, it's improvised. The frontline supervisor, the person managing 5, 10, 20 people on the floor every single day, they likely have no meeting architecture to plug into, no model to follow, no defined cadence that was built with their role in mind. What they have is a calendar, a team that's waiting for direction, and whatever habits they picked up watching the people above them. That gap between where your meeting cadence ends and where the work actually happens is one of the most expensive gaps in your operation. That's where misalignment lives. Issues that should be caught early don't because nobody at the front line had a standing forum to surface them. Teams that should be executing with clarity are operating on assumptions instead. And the supervisor at the center of it, they're not failing because they're incapable. They're failing because nobody built them a system or empowered them within one. When frontline supervisors are given no model, no structure, and no architecture to plug into, they default to what they know. And what they know usually produces one of 3 patterns. Pattern 1 is reactive chaos. No standing cadence, no routine, every day starts cold. The supervisor spends their time responding to whatever's loudest. The equipment issue, the personnel conflict, the production shortfall, and never creates the conditions for the team to get ahead of problems. There are no regular touch points, no standing communication, no consistent moment where the team gets direction and alignment. In this pattern, the supervisor is always firefighting because they never built a system that could prevent the fires. Pattern 2 is the interrogation meeting. This one's a little more subtle, and honestly, it's more common than most senior leaders realize. The supervisor does hold regular meetings, but the meeting is built around extraction. Status updates, progress reports, accountability checks. Where are you on this? What happened with that? Why isn't this done yet? The information flows up and toward the supervisor. The team sits there, one by one, reporting status while everyone else waits their turn. It's micromanagement dressed up as a team meeting, and the team knows it. They dread it. They come in with their defenses up, not because they're disengaged, but because the meeting was never designed to serve them. And pattern 3 is the inherited routine on autopilot. The supervisor runs the same meeting their predecessor ran. Same day, same time, same format. They inherit it when they took the role, and they've been running it ever since, without ever asking what it's actually for. No intentionality behind it, no clear purpose, no defined outcomes. It just happens every week until eventually it gets canceled because everybody stopped believing it was worth the hour. Here's what all 3 of these patterns have in common. The supervisor was never given a model. They were promoted, handed a team, and left to figure it out. This isn't a character problem. It's not a capability problem. It's a system problem, and it's fixable. Here's the reframe that changes everything. Most recurring meetings at every level of most organizations are built to serve the leader's need for information. The agenda is structured around what the leader needs to know. The conversation flows toward the top of the room. Status, updates, reports. What are you doing? Where are you? What's the status? And for some, not all, senior level meetings, leadership team reviews, ops meetings, quarterly business reviews, that structure makes some sense. Senior leaders need line of sight into the organization. The information flowing upward serves a legitimate purpose there. But that model breaks down completely at the front line. A frontline supervisor doesn't need a weekly status report from their team of 10. They're on the floor with them every day. All that does is produce weak leadership habits and a resentful team. A recurring meeting's primary responsibility at the frontline level is not to inform the supervisor. It's to equip the team. In other words, the meeting isn't for you, it's for them. The information should flow down and outward, toward the people who are about to go and execute. Direction, priorities, clarity on expectations, removal of obstacles, purpose. What do you need from me to do your job today? That is a fundamentally different meeting, different agenda, different energy, different outcome. And it produces a fundamentally different kind of team. The shift is simple to say, but it's incredibly hard to make. From what are you doing for me to what can I do for you? When a supervisor makes that shift, They stop being a task manager and they start being a leader. And the team feels it almost immediately. In aviation, we have a name for this kind of meeting, and it's been producing exactly that outcome for decades. Pilots don't just show up and fly. Before every mission, and I mean every mission, the crew gathers for what we call a crew brief. It doesn't matter how experienced you are, how many hours you've logged, or how many times you've flown that route. The brief happens every time. And here's what's important to understand about what a crew brief actually is. It's not the commander asking the crew to report their status. It's not a check-in. It's not an accountability session. The crew brief is the commander giving the crew everything they need to execute the mission safely and effectively. Mission objectives, roles and responsibilities, known risks and contingencies, communication protocols. The information flows toward the people who are about to go do the work, not away from them. A crew member walking out of a brief isn't dreading what just happened. They're not calculating how quickly they can get back to their real work. They're oriented. They're aligned. They know exactly what the mission is, who owns what, where the risks are, and what to do if something goes wrong. That's what any team's recurring meeting should feel like. Not long, not complicated, focused, structured, and built to serve the people who are about to go execute. Here's what that looks like translated to the floor. What's the mission today? Start every meeting with clarity on priorities and objectives. What does winning look like for this shift, this day, this week? Don't assume your team knows. Tell them. This is where episode 20's mission nesting does its daily work. The organizational mission translate in today's priorities in language that the team can act on. Then who owns what? Roles and responsibilities made explicit, not assumed. When everyone knows exactly what they're accountable for, execution tightens and finger pointing disappears. Then where are the risks? What obstacles are on the horizon? What resources are short? What could go wrong today, and how do we get ahead of it? Surface problems in the brief so they don't become crises on the floor. And then lastly, and arguably most importantly, what do you need from me? This is the question that changes the room. It's the supervisor's explicit offer to clear the path, and it signals something to the team that no status update ever could. It tells them that the meeting exists to serve them, not to report to you, not to update you, but to equip them. That single question asked consistently and genuinely shifts the energy of every meeting that follows. That's the crew brief applied to frontline leadership. It doesn't require an hour. It doesn't require a conference room. It just requires intention and the discipline to run it consistently. If you're a senior leader listening to this, here's what I want you to take away. The goal isn't for you to attend every frontline team meeting. The goal is to build the architecture that empowers every leader between you and the front lines to run their own cadence. Think about how your senior meeting cadence came to exist. Someone, at some point, decided what meetings needed to happen, defined their purpose, determined who should be in the room, and put them on the calendar. That wasn't an accident. It was a decision. Your frontline deserves the same intentionality. Most organizations have never made that decision. They've assumed supervisors would figure it out, or they've handed down a format from above without explaining why it exists or what it's supposed to accomplish. And then they've wondered why communication breaks down before it ever reaches the floor. You don't magically scale leadership through talent and hard work. You scale it through nested and connected missions and meeting architecture. When done right, that looks like every frontline supervisor running a consistent, structured team cadence, not because someone's watching, but because they understand what the meeting is for and what it produces. They brief their team the way a pilot briefs a crew. Direction flows down, issues surface early, the team executes with clarity, and here's the payoff. When frontline supervisors run effective recurring meetings, problems stop traveling up the chain. Issues that used to land on your desk because nobody at the floor had a standing forum to catch them get resolved at the level closest to the work. your supervisors stop escalating and start solving. Your operation runs differently. That's what scaling leadership looks like. Not more oversight, not more check-ins from above, better design at every level. The organizations that figure this out stop treating the front line as their greatest source of operational risk. They start treating it as their greatest source of operational leverage. If today's episode landed for you, if you're sitting with the question of where your meeting cadence actually stops in your organization, I want to give you a practical place to start. Download the Leader's Preflight Checklist at operationlead.com. It's a proven daily leadership framework built on the same principles we talked about today. Structured, intentional, and designed to give your frontline supervisors a system they can execute consistently. It's free, and it's the first concrete step toward building the architecture your frontline needs. And if you're a senior leader who's ready to have a more serious conversation about what a frontline leadership development system looks like nested into your operation, go to operationlead.com to learn about our system and process. Here's what I want you to walk away with today. Meeting fatigue isn't a workforce problem. It's a design problem. And the design has been wrong for a long time. Not because anyone intended it, but because most of us inherited a broken model with no alternative. The fix starts with a single question. What can I do for you? Build your recurring meetings around that question. Equip your team before they execute. Give your supervisors a cadence and a model and watch what changes on the floor. Serve, don't be served. That's how you empower. It's how you activate. Next week, we're going to keep building on this. We're going to talk about what happens when your frontline supervisors are busier than ever, but getting less done. And why that's not a time management problem. It's a leadership problem. And there's a fix for that too. Until then, I'm Craig Coyle, and this is the Frontline Leadership Podcast. Let's lead.